met the head of Somalia. Did you know that? And I suggested that maybe he'd like to take her back. He said, I don't want her. Okay, what
else? He was talking about Ilhan Omar in that first clip there that you just saw. But we've got to talk about this massive fraud scandal that is surfacing out of Minnesota with the Somalians, okay? What is happening here is just absolutely mind-boggling. You would think, you know, if you are from a different country, coming to another country, you would want to be on the straight and narrow, right? You're not going to want to do anything even remotely questionable. But that is not the case in Minnesota. Apparently, there's a whole lot of fraud going on, and Uncle Trump has taken notice of it, and he is doing something about it. And that something is sending Ilhan Omar's Somalian constituents back to their own country. I want to show you guys what Uncle Trump had to say about this entire situation. I'm going to throw it up on the screen here. There you go. Now, what he had to say was Minnesota under Governor Walz is a hub of fraudulent money laundering activity. I am, as President of the United States, hereby terminating, effective immediately, the Temporary Protected Status, TPS program for Somalis in Minnesota. Somali gangs are terrorizing the people of the great state and billions of dollars are missing. Send them back to where they came from. It's over. President Donald J. Trump. So that's what he had to say about the entire situation. And this scandal is absolutely massive. And while researching this entire thing, I found some other fraud I mean, the fraud is rampant. It is absolutely rampant. I could literally make another video on the fraud that is happening in Minnesota, specifically with the Somali residents. It is absolutely mind-boggling. It's almost as if like a couple of them, like, you know, dabbled into frauding the government and they got away with it. And they told their friends, their Somalian friends, and then they did it and they got away with it. And then, you know, the cycle just kept repeating itself until, you know, more and more people, like this mass of people was just defrauding the government because everybody was getting away with it. And yeah, it's pretty wild, man. A lot of money is being blown. And we're going to get to some of that here at the end as well, because Tim Walz is actually trying to recover the money, but it's a shame the way that he's trying to recover it. But let's hop into this clip. Check it out.
A housing program that's supposed to be a lifeline for those rebuilding their lives. But what our team uncovered is allegations of fraud, forged signatures, and tax dollars exploited. Here's AJ Legault with Housing Hustle, a new Recovery Inc. investigation.
Here we go.
You're on a stakeout with Carol Levin Investigates at an out-of-the-way office building in Brooklyn Park. The man getting behind the wheel and blacked out windows of that luxury ride runs a company called Leo Human Services. This is one of their advertisements. They're paid millions in tax dollars to help find and maintain housing for people with disabilities like substance use disorder.
I've never got an hour of help.
Stephen Smith is in addiction recovery. He says he found his own housing, but recently discovered Leo Human Services claimed to help him.
Yeah. Crazy.
That help billed to Medicaid for thousands of dollars.
We have a bill for $755 and then $531 again at the very bottom for another bill for $755.
Stephen remembers getting a few phone calls, but that's it.
I never met with them. I've never even seen them.
The Minnesota Department of Human Services oversees the Housing Stabilization Services, or HSS program. Their rules clearly state HSS services are medical Medicaid services, and some of them must be provided in person.
Who are you? You've never helped me.
Stephen is not the only one to tell us they never met anyone from Leo Human Services.
Hundreds and thousands of dollars. I have no idea who this person is. None.
See what I mean? See what I mean? Claiming to have helped people that you never even met. Never even met. You made a simple phone call and then started sending out the bills. Absolutely mind-boggling. And bold. And very, very bold. I mean, you got to have some big cojones to do something like that. You know, it's pretty wild, man. It's pretty wild. Now, I want to play this other clip of Will Kane actually really breaking it all down and getting into some of the numbers and how some of these folks are scamming the government, some of the other ways, because it is absolutely sickening, some of the things that these folks are doing. Not just that, what you saw in that last clip where, you know, they're claiming to have helped people, but they're also claiming some other things to get over on the taxpayers. Check it out.
A new, stunning report from the City Journal showing a massive fraud scheme in Minnesota. You have to hear about this. It involves false autism claims, the Somali community, and connections to a terror group. Let's explain over at The Wall. Now, it all revolves around Autism and HSS program. That is Minnesota's Medicaid Housing Stabilization Services. Now, this was created to help seniors, addicts, and others find housing, but the criteria to enter this program was incredibly loose and therefore easy to take advantage of. It's led to fraud and costs absolutely exploding. Just 5 years ago, in 2020, costs for this program were $2.6 million. 4 years later, by 2024, cost had been over $100 million, 104. Through the first 6 months of this year, costs are at $61 million, meaning if you double that over the entirety of the year, you're looking at $122 million. In 5 years, from $2 million to $122 million. Now, why? 6 people are accused of defrauding HSS, and they're members of the Somali community. But this just gets worse if we take a look at Minnesota's federally funded autism program. Now, several people, and this is an example, a woman in the Somali community, are co-conspirators, and they're accused of recruiting kids for autism therapy. They brought in families, had them convinced to get their kids diagnosed as autistic. In fact, these families ultimately ended up having various social services bid for their children, competing with the number size of check that they would get. It didn't matter if the kids had autism. And what happened? Autism claims to Medicaid surged. In 2018, $3 million. By 2023, listen here, from $3 million to $400 million. Autism providers jumped from 41 to 328 in 5 years. Now, City Journal reports that the Somali fraud rings send a lot of money back to Somalia. 40% of households in Somalia get remittances from abroad. That totals $1.7 billion. That is more than the entire budget of the Somali government. Money being sent abroad, from abroad, back to Somalia. Where is that money going? Take a look at this. Most alarmingly, a lot of that money is funneled through money traders, and in the end, ends up in the hands of al-Qaeda-linked Islamic terror group Al-Shabaab. So to bring this full circle, the Minnesota taxpayers are funneling money through fraudulent autism claims back to Somalia, where that money lands in the accounts of Al-Shabaab.
Wild stuff, ain't it? Absolutely wild stuff. Claims went from, I think it was 4 million or 3.3 million to 400 million. And the other one was 2 million all the way up to 122 million. I mean, numbers that just absolutely exploded. 2 million, 122 million. 3 million, 400 million. Bro, the amount of money that some of these folks have allegedly scammed from taxpayers is mind-boggling. Mind-boggling. 120 million plus another 400 million. Absolutely wild. Over $500 million gone. Gone. Absolutely wild stuff, man. Absolutely wild stuff. And in part of these exploding numbers, right? Because it's not just this fraud. And there's some other fraud as well that I can get into, but I'm going to save that for another video. And we talked about this. Maybe I've talked about it on the other channel. No, I've talked about it here as well. You know, these Democrats, what these Democrats do is whenever there's any type of issue, any type of problem, it's throw money at it, throw money at it, throw money at it. That's what they attempt to do. And we've seen how detrimental that is in a place like Chicago, where Mayor Brandon Johnson is facing a massive budget deficit in trying to raise property taxes on his constituents. You know, the same constituents that he promised he wouldn't raise property taxes on because that is a lazy way of governing, quote unquote, according to him. And now he's attempting to do it himself. Well, guess what old Timmy Tim is doing in Minnesota? Yeah, you probably guessed it. To make up that budget deficit, he's charging the taxpayers for it.
And you might not like what you see when you open up that envelope. I did not open mine. I didn't want to see it. Preliminary notices so far, but these new numbers just released by the Minnesota Department of Revenue show property taxes around the state could increase by a total of almost $950 million. That's a jump of nearly 7% compared to this year. The state says cities, counties, schools, other taxing districts are all taxing at a higher rate than last year, as we have been reporting on for weeks now. Local governments have until December 29th to set their final levies. The finalized property tax statements will be released early next year.
Yeah. Charging taxpayers another 7%. My goodness. When will these folks learn to stop voting for these Democrats? They blow your money. They allow fraud to happen. And then when they can't balance the budget, they just tax you even more. So that they can just simply repeat the cycle. Instead of getting to the root of the fraud and stopping it, instead of, not spending as much money. No, can't do that as a Democrat. Absolutely not. We got to allow the fraud to happen because those are our constituents. We got to turn a blind eye to it. But then also, we got to keep spending more money to help anybody and everybody. It's absolutely wild, man. Absolutely wild how much money is being wasted by these Democrats, and especially in Minnesota. And some people are absolutely fed up with it.
I'm calling on Governor Tim Walz to resign as governor. Who am I? I'm a taxpayer. And if you're a taxpayer here in Minnesota, I hope you will join me in asking Governor Tim Walz to resign. Why? Because he has absolutely failed this state on almost every single level. We had a report come out from the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce that between 2019 and 2024, which is the last year data was available, Minnesota is failing on every single economic measure. Now, you may argue, well, that's something that needs to be taken care of at the ballot box, and I would agree with you, but let's add more to this. He's also failed his own party. He told the Democrat Party and those that want to see gun reform take place here in Minnesota, which I disagree with, needless to say, in the wake of the Catholic school shooting, he said he was going to hold a special session and take a vote on banning assault weapons, scary-looking guns, according to Democrats, and high-capacity magazines. And he failed to do so. He's failed his own party. But let's get to the real reason why Governor Tim Walz needs to resign, and he needs to do it today. It's the fraud. We already have the documented fraud. $2 to $6 billion has gone under Governor Tim Walz's watch, under programs created by his party while he was in office. And now we have multiple sourced allegations that taxpayer dollars went through autism centers fraudulently and then were sent overseas to fund terrorist organizations. Here in Minnesota, we had a multi-billion-dollar surplus a few years ago. We got back a tiny fraction of that as taxpayers. That money was more than what the state should have taken away from us, and they didn't give it back to the taxpayer. That money goes to these different social service programs that have now been discovered to be fraudulent. And that money, we now know, according to the reporting by the City Journal, was sent overseas to fund one of the worst terrorist organizations, Al-Shabaab. I talked with a counterterrorism expert friend of mine today who says that it's shocking, but not surprising. Enough is enough. I hope you'll join me. I hope you'll join me in telling Governor Tim Walz that he needs to resign. If you have a platform, an account on this platform, I hope you'll post a video. If you have other social media, I hope you will also put out there your request that Governor Tim Walz resign from his post for failing the people of Minnesota. There's enough evidence now. Enough is enough. A true leader would have stepped down a long time ago. He shouldn't be running for a third term, but I don't even want to discuss that because he shouldn't even be governor. I hope you'll join me in my calls for Governor Tim Walz to resign immediately.
Yeah. I don't blame you, brother. I really don't blame you at all, because what Timmy Tim is allowing to happen and doing in Minnesota is absolutely criminal. This is crazy. But we've seen this script before, and I've talked about it in past videos. Democrats have been known and been shown to take budget surpluses to the tune of billions in some cases and flip them somehow, some kind of way, into billion-dollar deficits. Think about how mind-boggling that is. Like, you took a multi-billion-dollar surplus. You had more money in the coffers than what you had going out, to the tune of billions. And you've managed to flip that into a billion-dollar deficit, to the point where now you're having to charge taxpayers even more. And they're just going to continue this. I mean, they're not stopping. They're not stopping. We like I said, we've seen this time after time after time again. These governors doing the exact same thing. Even a place like California had a budget surplus before Gavin Newsom took office. Guess where they're at now? Deficit. Maryland, same situation. Where else was it? Was it Michigan? There was a few other states where a Republican was running it, and then a Democrat took over, and the Democrat absolutely blew the budget out the water. And we're seeing it again once again in Minnesota, and the people that have to hold the bag are the taxpayers, being charged even more. And you wonder why I sit here and I say, I don't understand why these folks keep voting for these Democrats. I don't understand it. I really don't get it. They don't provide you with what they're promising, and don't follow through with what they promise, right? And then on top of that, they're charging you even more money after they've blown through the budget. I literally was talking about this on the other channel, Extra Rich. If you're not subscribed over there, definitely go and subscribe. How people in Chicago were upset because their property taxes in some cases went up 100%. I'm not joking. Could you imagine your property taxes going up 100%? 100%. No joking. I think on average across the entire city, and it's full disclosure, property taxes went up 17% across the entire city on average. But there are some pockets that went up 100%. That is crazy. That is wild. Why? Because Democrats are blowing through the budget and allowing fraud to happen and turning a blind eye to it. Fraud is so rampant in Minnesota, it is mind-boggling. But anyway, y'all get in the comments. Let me know your thoughts and your opinions about all of this. Thanks for tuning in as always. Peace and love. I'm out.